Okay, hi there. Today, for Algebra 2, we're going to be covering Chapter 5-3 on solving polynomial equations. So there's a couple formulas that we need to write down and get to know first. The first one is something we've already covered, I believe, perfect squares. Perfect squares are, if I had a plus b to the second power, like is written over here, you could have multiplied that out by going a plus b times a plus b, but there's a shortcut, and that's to square the front term, square the back term, and then take the two terms, the a and the b, multiply those together, and then double them, and you get the middle term of 2ab. And the same thing with the a minus b squared. The only difference there is you got a subtraction sign in front of the 2ab. So quick real world example over here. If I gave you x plus 5 squared, this would be, if I did it the shortcut, square the front one, x squared, square the back one, multiply the 5 and the x together, gives you 5x, and then double it is 10x, and there you go. It's a little sloppy, but that's a 10x in there. Okay, plus 25, I still am sloppy. There, okay. And if I was to do a minus, it would be x minus 5 squared. It would all be the same thing. This stays positive 25. The difference is that's minus 10x. 5x times negative 2 is negative 5. X times negative 5 is negative 5x, times 2 is negative 10x. All right, so there's your examples there. All right, and that's a shortcut. Now this is a new one for you, the sum or difference of two cubes. If I have a cubed plus b cubed, I can factor that into a plus b times a squared minus ab plus b squared. Excuse me. And similarly, if I had a cubed minus b cubed, it's the same thing, except it's a minus b, and the minus ab becomes plus ab, just like is written there. Okay, so you should write those down, become very familiar with them, know them, memorize them, whatever it takes. All right, so I'm going to jump right in with some problems here. Number one. Big fancy directions like solve. I got 6x to the third plus 10x squared plus 5x equals 0. Okay, so when I start, I want to make sure I have equals 0. All right, in this case, it already is set up that way. Oh, I didn't give an example back here of the difference in sum of two cubes. Let me back up for 1 second. I'll go back to that. Sorry about that. I had brain cramps trying to get ahead of myself. So suppose I had an example over here and I wanted to factor 8x cubed plus 1, okay? You can do this by formula, if I'm looking over here at this, a is going to be the third root of 8, which is 2, and the third root of x to the third, which is x. B is going to be the third root of 1, which is 1, okay? And really you can start plugging those things in now. So a is 2x plus b is 1. A will be, a squared is 2x squared, which is 4x squared, minus a times b is 2x times 1 is 2x, and plus b squared is plus 1. If I was to factor 8x to the third minus 1, this would really be the same thing. The only difference is where the addition and subtraction signs are. You can see over here it's going to be a minus b, and plus plus in the big parentheses. Okay, That's usually the way I do it. I break it up into figure out what A and B is and go from there, and then use the formula. Okay, back to this. Solve. All right, so they all have x's. I'm going to pull that out right away, and then I'm going to work on factoring or solving it by quadratic formula. So I'm left with 6x squared plus 10x plus 5. All right, so you could look at that and try to factor it. 6 times 5 is 30. It doesn't take long to realize, since they're all positive numbers, that there's no factors of 30 that add up to 10, which means we're stuck with the quadratic formula. I know one of my answers already is that one right there, x equals 0. So I'm going to write that down and circle it so I don't forget it, okay? Because I'm going to work real hard to get the other two answers. That one's a piece of cake. All right, so I'm going to do quadratic formula on this. So, A is 6, B is 10, C is 5. Okay, getting that right from here. And then I'm going to plug this into the quadratic formula, and I get negative 10 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, and when you break this down, you get negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 120 all over 12. So interesting thing happens here. I get the square root of negative 20. All right, so you guys learned that, we're not done there. We can do imaginary answers here with I, remembering that the square root of negative 1 is I. Okay, so if I go negative 10 plus or minus square root of 20, and I got the I over here, right? Now I can break up 20 also. 20 is 4 times 5, which means I get the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. Square root of 4 is 2, so I get 2 root 5. Put the I after that, all over 12. Now, I can reduce this, okay? I can take all of these coefficients here and divide them by 2 is really what you do. They're all even. So I can divide this by 2, this by 2, and that by 2. The other way you could think of it is if I pulled a 2 out of the top and a 2 out of the bottom, I get negative 5 plus or minus root 5i. And then these cancel. But you can just take the shortcut and divide all the coefficients by 2 also, which gives me negative 5 plus or minus square root of 5i over 6. And those are my other two answers, okay? Just remember that is two answers. This is really the same as, negative 5 plus root 5i over 6 and negative 5 minus root 5i over 6. As long as you remember that, I'm fine with you just writing the answer like this, okay? All right, so other teachers might not be, but I am. So anyway, some teachers are different. All right, so those are the three answers. And don't forget we put that answer, the third one of x equals 0 over there. So that's my three answers. This is two of them right here, and then the x equals 0 is the third one. All right, so that was a tricky one. That was one of the harder ones we'll be doing today. Number 2, multiply. X plus 3 times x squared minus 3x plus 9. All right. Okay, so I kind of like the box technique for this one. If I do it over on the side here, this is a 2 by 3. Which means I'm going to have a rectangle. And I got x plus 3. And I got x squared minus 3x plus 9. So it's like a Punnett square. Multiply to find out what's in each box. That one's going to be x squared times x, which is x to the third. Remember, you add the exponents, that's got an implied 1. X squared times 3 is 3x squared. Excuse me, negative 3 times x is negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times, negative 3x times 3 is negative 9x. X times 9 is 9x. 3 times 9 is 27. I can combine some boxes together here. In fact, an interesting thing happens here. Those cancel, and so do those, which leaves me with x to the third plus 27. Why did that work out like that? Well, because that's one of those sum of cubes. If you look back at your formulas here to the very beginning, that would be one of those formulas. So we went the other direction, though, where they asked you to multiply. I know you thought I was probably crazy for asking that question. But let's take another look at those. Those are tricky. Number 3. I'm going to call it 2b. No, this is definitely 3. Sorry. And it says solve x cubed minus 64 equals 0. Okay, so first thing is that's a difference of 2 cubes. Okay, so we need to factor it. All right, so what's a and what's b? Well, the third root of x to the third is x, and the third root of 64 is 4. Okay, 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. All right, so now I'm going over here. Now I've got my formula. Okay, my formula is a cubed minus b cubed equals a plus b times a squared plus ab, except I made a mistake over there. I'll fix it in a minute. Plus b squared. This is a minus. That's a mistake. Okay, so now I can plug in my numbers. X minus 4 times x squared plus 4x plus 4 times 4 is 16, and there we go. All right, so this is what I'm solving now. All right, now this equals 0. So either one of two things is true here. The nice easy one is x minus 4 equals 0, which means x equals 4. Or, here's the hard one. This one's going to take a little work. Or x squared plus 4x plus 16 equals 0. And that's not one you can factor. Factors of 16 that add up to 4, good luck. You'll be there all day. There's none that add up. So going back to quadratic formula, a is 1, b is 4, c is 16. Okay, and now I'm going to roll right through it. I get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. When you boil this down, you get this, which means I get negative 4 plus or minus 48 is 16 times 3. Square root of 16 is 4. Root 3i all over 2. And then we can reduce, right? I can divide all of those by 2. Excuse me, negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 3i. And then the other answer was, what was in, make sure I don't forget, x equals 4. So there's my 3 answers, okay? All right, let's see. Number 3, That was number 3, wasn't it? I'm going to be off by 1 because my notes. Okay, number 4. Factor by grouping. You come across these sometimes, and these are nice. X to the third, not x squared, excuse me. X to the third plus 3x squared plus 4x plus 12 equals 0. Okay, so when I look at this, you know, it's really nice when you can find one that you just draw a line down the middle. They have to match up though. It doesn't work all the time, but for this one it will. Because I'm looking at the right and I see if I pull a 4 out here of both 4x and 12, I'm left with x plus 3. And that's going to be nice over here because the left side is really x plus 3, but if I pull out an x squared, then I'm left with x plus 3. And lo and behold, my parentheses match. And now I can go, what's inside the parentheses will be one set of parentheses here, the x plus 3 will be 1. The other one will be what's outside the parentheses, which would be x squared plus 4. Okay, now I'm not done because it said solve it, which means I've got these two things. So set each set of parentheses equal to 0, and we will get our answers. All right, so this one's easy. You get x equals -3 when you subtract 3 from both sides. This side, a little bit more interesting. I get x squared equals -4. Take the square root of both sides. Remember, when you're taking the square root of x squared, there's always a plus or minus. Anytime you're taking the root, for that matter. So I got plus or minus square root of -4. So square root of 4 is 2, but it's negative, so it's going to be plus or minus 2i. Okay. So those are my 3 answers. And I knew there would be 3 answers because I had a factor or a degree of 3 on that question. Okay. Why don't you try this one? This would be number 5. You can factor by grouping and solve. Three x to the third plus 12x squared minus 3x equals 12. Oh, a word to the wise. Before you start this one, the first thing you want to do is get it equal to 0, which means you're going to subtract 12 from both sides. So you're really going to be factoring this. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. It's an easy mistake to make. All right, so you can do that one, do that you try there for bring it into class, see how he did. Okay, synthetic division. Divide x to the third plus 14 minus 14x squared plus 51x minus 54 by x plus 2. Okay. All right, so synthetic division. In order to do this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these coefficients, okay? Remembering that there's a 1 in front of that x to the third. So that's 1. -14. 51, negative 54. Okay. Now, here's one of the things you got to remember, that I really want the 0 for that, which means, you go x plus 2 equals 0, therefore x equals negative 2. Okay. So my negative 2 goes over here in the corner. I put a box. I put a big line underneath here. Okay. And I'm going to bring down the 1. And this is just steps, okay? But this is going to make your life, you really want to get good at synthetic division, I'll tell you right now, okay? It's going to make your life much easier. It's all about multiplying and adding, okay? So in order for me to divide this, first I'm going to multiply. I'm going to take the negative 2 and you multiply. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And then you add straight down, okay? Negative 14 plus negative 2 is negative 16. And then I multiply that negative 2 times the negative 16 again. Negative times negative is positive. Gives me 32. And then I can add straight down again. It's multiply, add, multiply, add. When I add those two together, I get 83. And then I'm multiplying again. Negative 2 times 83 is negative 166. And then you can add those together. And I get negative 220. This is the remainder, okay? Now, here's the proper way to do this. I don't even think your book does it proper. The answer, these are the coefficients. So the 1, so I got 1, negative 16, 83, and negative 220. Let me just write this. So it's the remainder, I'm going to start there, is negative 220. The remainder always goes over this, okay? It's over that. So it's over x plus 2. That's the correct way to write this, okay? Now the rest of it you have to get right also. So I got 1, negative 16, and 83. Now these have variables with them, okay? I started out up here with the x to the third power, which means I'm going to subtract 1 from the exponent, and that is going to be, if I take x to the third and subtract 1 from the exponent, I get 1x squared. And then they go down in, in descending order after that. X squared, then regular x, and then the regular number, okay? If I had to x to the third, the next one would be x squared, and then regular x, and then the regular number, okay? But this is the answer, and that's what you get when you divide, okay? All right, so that was the first one. You got to get a little bit of C1 before you can actually jump in. So now I'm on number 7. Divide x to the third minus 3x squared minus 4x and divide by x minus 4. Okay. So coefficients be 1, negative 3, negative 4. Now here's a trick, and you always got to be careful of this. You got to make sure you have every single exponent covered. So I have a 3, third power, I have a second power, and I have a first power, but I don't have a 0 power or a constant term, which means I need the 0 over here because you could always go plus 0, okay? And that's important, all right? Now this is going to be, remember you changed the sign over here, that's going to be plus 4, or you could have gone x minus 4 equals 0 and gotten x equals 4, okay? So now I'm going to draw my line, bring down the 1, and multiply and add. Multiply and add. 4 times 1 is 4. Add. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1. Multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. Add is 4 times 0. 4 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. So there's my remainder of 0, which means it goes in perfectly, which is great. I don't even have to write the remainder down this time. My answer is going to be, let's see, 1, 1, and 0. So I start out with x to the third, which means this one's going to be x squared 1x plus 0. So it's really that. Okay, you don't need the plus 0. You could leave it if you want, but x squared plus x. That's what you get. Good. All right. Number 8. You try. X to the third minus 3x to the second minus, oops, how did I do that? Sorry, fix that. Three x to the fourth plus 2x to the third minus 23x squared minus 2x plus 12. And you're going to divide by x plus 3, okay? Which means you're going to have negative 3 up here in the corner, remember? All right. All right, you can do that one as a you try. And this is going to be my last problem here. I think I'm on 9. Find all solutions of 0 equals 27x to the third minus 8. All right, so first thing, you're going to factor it. Okay, a is the third root of 27, which is 3. And the third root of x. B will be the third root of 8. So when I go and factor this into parentheses, it's a difference of 2 cubes. I get 3x minus 2 times 3 squared is 9x squared plus 6x plus 4. And then I'm going to solve it. All right. Now this one, the first one, is super easy. 3x minus 2 equals 0. So you add 2, divide by 3, gives you 2/3. The other one, however, you're going to need quadratic formula for it. Okay. A is 9, B is 6, C is 4. And when you plug that in, you get negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 9 times 4 all over 2 times 9. All right, and when I simplify that out, I get negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 108 over 18. A little more work on that negative 108 will give me 36 times 3 times negative square root of negative 1, which means that'll be 6 root 3i. Okay, so I got the here negative 6 plus or minus 6 square root of 3i over 18. And then if I divide all those 6's by negatives or by positive 6, I get negative 1 plus or minus root 3i over 3. And those are my other two answers, as well as x equaling 2/3. And there's the answers. Okay. Yep. Very good. And that's it. I'm going to stop there, close it out with a little more music.